What is going on YouTube? Gabmus here and welcome to the second episode of the Tech Pills weekly live stream. So I hope everyone's doing okay. And I think we can start with some little news. Let's start it easy this time, okay? So Firefox 71 is out, and I just wanted to talk about a small feature that maybe you don't know that's out there. It's a picture-in-picture mode for practically any videos, and the nice thing is that it works on YouTube, Netflix, and most other video platforms out there. So let me just show you how that works because it's really a slick and useful feature. So I have a video I made right here. This is my EndeavourOS overview, and as you see here, there's a small button. If you hover with the mouse, it says picture in picture. Just press that, and there you have it. Here's your video, and it just works as normal. And you can resize it and put it wherever, and just do your work as normal and have a video always on top of everything. That's quite a nice feature if you ask me. And if you want to restore the video to normal, you just press this X button here and it's back to where it was. So I just wanted to give you a quick heads up. And anyway, I'm really happy to see actually some real features included in Firefox, since, well, Chrome has been dominant for so long at this point, and since Quantum released, we've seen a lot of very nice improvements, starting with all the privacy improvements and the various additions that they've done with the tracker blocking, and now this picture-in-picture mode, and well, so much other stuff that they're continuously adding. It's nice to see. I think we can move on to the first actual topic of today, which is about NVIDIA. And me and NVIDIA, we have a kind of a weird relationship because I like their GPUs purely from a technical side, from a technical point of view, because they're actually pretty nice hardware. But the thing that I really hate about NVIDIA is, well, their approach to software and their tendency to actually do everything out of standard. And I'm talking about PhysX, I'm talking about CUDA, I'm talking about practically the entire software stack, including RTX, that NVIDIA uses is proprietary to their own platform. Even something like G-Sync, and at the end of the day, with G-Sync, they had to give up and just offer the possibility to users to actually run a normal FreeSync monitor and have adaptive VSync, because at the end of the day, G-Sync wasn't all that different from FreeSync, to the point that just a simple software toggle could enable compatibility. And well, that's my idea of what kind of company NVIDIA is. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about here is that apparently there's some news with NVIDIA and open source, some kind of open source announcement in 2020. That could be kind of exciting in a way, because they're teasing something, and maybe you could think it's an open source driver, maybe something like what AMD is doing. Maybe they want to include it in the kernel and upstream everything, but I don't think so, honestly. To be honest, as of right now, I'm more inclined to think that they're trying to tease something about their ARM embedded platform. So my idea is more oriented towards that. But well, in the best case scenario, I think they could do something similar to what AMD, kind of similar to what AMD is doing. They could maybe be announcing some kind of integration with Linux kernel, maybe just the actual kernel driver, and then have a separate user space module to actually handle the rendering and the GPU and all that kind of stuff in a separate module. So again, this is just a speculation. I'm just trying to um, trying to look at the best case scenario here. Maybe they want to do something like what AMD is doing. Again, I don't think that's what's gonna happen. I think they're going to talk about something related to ARM, and yeah, they're talking about supporting Nouveau and including signed firmware behavior documentation patches and NVIDIA kernel drivers, but that alone doesn't mean a lot, at least to me. But anyway, we can have hope. We can have hope, and in case it's really going to be an actual kernel driver built into the kernel, this is gonna mean, well, this is gonna be huge for Linux gaming and the whole Linux integration with NVIDIA in general. Let's see where that goes. We shall wait for 2020 to actually know more about that. Of course, guys, if you want to comment on anything that I'm saying or ask questions or whatever, feel free to. The chat's there for a purpose. And let's move on to the next news for today. And that's about Purism. And Purism is again in the news. They're always in the news in some kind of way. I guess they let people talk about them. But anyway, so Purism announced a $2,000, well, that's $1,999 Librem 5 made in USA. Well, the first thing that I thought when I saw the news was, okay, they're gonna make an actual super premium Librem 5. Well, the price isn't great, but if that's hardware-wise better than what they are currently offering, well, that's at least interesting. But apparently, no, that's not what we're talking about here. They want to actually create a, well, they want to sell a Librem 5 that's identical to the one that they're currently selling, but assembled as much as possible in the USA. And that's a bold move in a way, because I don't know how much of an investment that would require. I know it's mostly assembly only and not actual production of silicon or anything like that. But I mean, an assembly line would require some investment, and I don't think they will do anything of this if there is not enough demand for it. But at the same time, I see the reasoning behind this idea, because one of the most well, terrifying, really, kind of attacks that one could be subject to is a supply chain attack. And it's been a theoretical kind of attack for a long time, but to be honest, especially recently, we've been hearing about them more and more. A while ago, with Supermicro server motherboards having some kind of weird integrated chip in them that God knows what was doing. And again, anyway, supply chain attacks are a real threat, and particularly for a privacy-centric device like the Librem 5, that's gonna be bought by people who put privacy in the center of their that value privacy over everything else. If they're investing on something like the Librem 5, that's probably the case. And a supply chain attack for that kind of user is a possibility, and it's a risk. And so if there's demand for it, they're gonna they're gonna actually do this probably, and it's gonna be useful for someone. So the chat saying need a dark theme for your live stream. That's actually a nice suggestion. I can just, like, I think invert all the colors and be done with it. Maybe for next week, we'll see. I actually use a dark theme for everything at this point, but I just think that a light theme is more, I don't know, it looks nicer in a live stream. It has some nice contrast with the QR codes and the writings and the decorations. But yeah, I can experiment with a dark theme. And the Lambo Linux says, I'm excited for the PinePhone. Love to get it just to have something to play with. All right. And I'm excited for the PinePhone as well. I mean, I do have the money to buy one currently, but I still don't want to. I just want to wait to see some people that I trust have it in their hands and see how it actually works. And I don't know. It could be a very interesting device. That was the nicest way to pretend the Purism isn't crazy. Okay, Purism isn't crazy. They're a weird company. I have to admit that. But honestly, I've seen you guys and many other people be so harsh to them, and it's not like they don't deserve it. And they kind of made some weird decisions and some weird marketing strategies, and their communication hasn't been so great. But to be honest, it's like the first company after Canonical that's actually trying to invest in this kind of product that we all want. So I don't know. Of course, they need to actually work on their things right now, because the Librem 5 at this point is a hot mess. But their track record is pretty decent. I mean, they ship laptops. They also initially had problems when they first launched them, but they started sorting them out, and like with incremental updates even to the hardware, they actually at some point got to deliver some pretty nice products. So I have some hope to actually see the Librem 5 be a successful product. Maybe not this year, maybe not 2020, but possibly 2021 onward. We'll see where they go. Maybe with some new hardware revisions. At this point, it's just all speculation, and we can really say anything about it. Anyway, I was talking about the PinePhone, and the PinePhone is a very interesting idea, and but I don't really have a very I don't have a strong opinion on Pine 64 yet, because they seem to be a really nice company. But a $150 Linux phone just sounds too good to be true. So I'm just gonna wait and see where that goes. If I see some reviews and see that it's actually usable as an everyday device, maybe not as a replacement for an Android phone, but if I see that it works and the battery life is decent and the performance is okay, well, I might buy one, and at that point it would be a very nice, interesting an interesting trip. So Tax Digital Michael says, "I have PinePhone on order." That's great, man. I will be waiting for your review. The Lamolink says, "Love the stream. Thanks a lot. I'm glad you like it." And Michael again, they did the same terrible things on the laptops and the tablet. Now the phone. They have no idea what they're doing. Oh, Michael. The laptops right now are 1600 with 3-year-old hardware. The laptops aren't even worth getting. It'd be awesome to see System 76 to make a phone. So quite a lot of things here. yeah, they're using all the hardware, but to be fair, I don't think that what they're doing to when the actual modification they're doing to their hardware are easy stuff. And changing going onward going forward a generation, like changing from Kaby Lake that they're currently using to Coffee Lake, or I don't know, Comet Lake, or whatever Intel's new lineup is, isn't really the easiest thing, considering all the modifications that they're doing and all the custom stuff that they have in place on their laptops. And at the end of the day, I think that if you buy a laptop to be private and as private as possible, and to have the features that actually the Purism laptop have, I don't think I think you can close an eye on the actual specs, because we're doing the same thing with these phones. Remember that the phones, the Librem 5 and the Pine phone, their specs aren't great, as well as the Pinebook. The Pinebook also doesn't have great specs hardware wise, but they're well, the Pinebook is actually Ryan from DasGeek made a review of it, and it looks like a very usable device. And I think that's gonna be the same thing for the PinePhone. Well, I hope at least. And I know what a Kaby Lake U series Intel CPU is capable of, and it's not a powerhouse, I mean, but for some particular workflows, it's more than enough. And that's my point. We're trying. So Pure, I don't think Purism is trying to deliver the latest and greatest, I don't know, hardware powerful stuff to the market. They're just trying to bring to the table something that's a compromise, because every product is a compromise. If I go to the store and buy I don't know, a pair of socks, and I have to compromise, because if I get like the light cotton, I know I cannot use them if it's too cold, if it's raining heavily, or I don't know. I'm just talking about socks right now. But anyway, what I want to say is that everything you buy is a compromise in a way, and they're choosing to compromise on maybe the greatest performance in the latest hardware to be able to deliver what their vision actually is: a private device. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic of today, and that is Debian and Debian developers voting over init system diversity. So this is a pretty controversial topic. For I don't get why it is controversial, but systemd is controversial. So if you don't know, if you've been living under a rock for how many years at this point, Debian is, well, one of the most important GNU/Linux distributions out there. And since I don't remember how long ago, they decided to switch their init system to systemd. And that started actually a pretty much global migration of Ubuntu, Arch Linux, and many other distros from their init system to systemd. And many people hated that thing, and because they actually don't like the way that systemd works, and they don't like the way that it replaces some other components of the system, and they don't like the way of how some people could say invasive, I can say comprehensive, and I don't know, it's just like a Swiss Army knife of services and timers, and it does many things, but I think it does them in a very nice way. Also, people don't like it because they say it's against the Unix philosophy, which is do one thing and do it well. But it really depends on what we're talking about. I mean, if you're talking about command line utilities, then well, sure. I mean, ls should just list files, and grep should search for stuff in stream, and so on. But having something like systemd, I think, makes things so much easier in a modern system for administration. I mean, if you're either using a desktop or a server or an IoT device, I think that systemd makes a lot of sense. But This is just my opinion, and not everyone has the same opinion on systemd. And this brought to an actual hard fork of the Debian project into a new distribution that's called Dev1, which is basically a Debian without systemd. And they're really working hard to make this distribution actually as usable as possible and to make it as compatible, considering that many new programs, many new softwares and system components actually, as of right now, require systemd to actually work. But anyway, what they're doing is they're trying to make a vote here. They're trying to make a vote on init system diversity and what role it has in the current Debian developer community. And I think that's a very interesting thing that they're doing, because they're actually talking about the problem, and they're trying to they're trying to set a direction, because people always complain about lots of stuff, especially in small communities. Braggy people are always louder than the people that actually do the work. So they want to understand how many of the internal Debian developers are interested in its system diversity, and how many well, actually don't care. And to be honest, I get the need to have the possibility to use different init systems, because one of the greatest things about Linux is its modularity, and the modularity of Linux comes, of course, with in many ways. Some use, like, I don't know, more BSD libraries and less GNU libraries, or use a different compiler, or do some different optimizations. We can change the desktop environment, the different programs we use, and so on. But the init system, it also makes sense that you want to use a different init system. One of the most compelling reasons I see for using a different init system is actually having a lighter weight system, in terms of RAM usage, in terms of actual size, raw size of the installed system. And it's important that there's the possibility to use a different init system remains in Linux. But at the same time, I don't think that Debian should be worrying too much about this, because as much of a big deal Dev1 was when it started, it looked like a great schism of the community. And honestly, honestly, at this point, I think that Dev1 has a place, as well as systemd Debian has a place in this current Linux world, because the init system is one very critical component of the system, particularly if you're using systemd. Systemd likes to integrate as much as possible into your system, and that's not a bad thing in my opinion. And that also makes the work of the Debian developers and maintainers easier, because they know they just have to target one init system, and they don't have to test and target and try and do all that work on different init systems, because they only support one. That actually makes a lot of sense in my opinion. This doesn't mean that we need to stop working on other init systems. That one has a place. So Debian, if you want Debian without systemd, you go with Dev1. If you want, I don't know, well, in Arch you can actually install different init systems. It's not really that easy, as far as I know. I've never tried, because I like systemd, but it's possible. And many other distros, there are different distros that give the possibility to the user. Well, no, but I mean derivative distros that strip out systemd and replace it with something else, like OpenRC or other stuff. But anyway, we'll see where that goes. I mean, this is a decision of the Debian project, and if they want to support multiple init systems, decision which I don't agree with, but if they want to do it, well, they're free to do it. Let's look at the chat real quick. Still talking about the Librem 5 apparently. So 0x4C47 says, I honestly think many people complaining don't even know exactly what they don't like and ignore all the advantages, which is quite common with new stuff. The only thing I don't like about systemd is that some things rely so much on it that it's almost impossible to run it in a container that usually doesn't support systemd. Okay, so I think you said very true stuff. Actually, the systemd, as I was saying before, is at this point is so it's everywhere. I mean, most distributions use systemd, and so most new software relies on systemd to work, and that's actually pretty bad if you want to still have a modular if you still want to have Linux be a modular system. But I think that's something that systemd itself could try to solve. I know that there's a thing called systemd shim, which basically tries to give the system an interface that like an API that works like systemd, but it actually doesn't use systemd, and that's actually a very nice idea. Maybe the systemd project could get involved firsthand in developing the shim, so that it's possible to use different init systems without so much trouble. Because again, at the end of the day, the choice needs to be there. Because if I want, you use the perfect example. Containers don't require systemd because, well, it's a container. It gets spawned by another. It gets spawned by the host operating system, and inside of it, you don't need to use systemd. And I'm pretty sure that there are some cases where you cannot use systemd. I'm not so much into containers myself, so I'm not sure about that. But anyway, that's one big problem about it. But it doesn't mean that systemd itself is bad. The Limit Linux says, what I like about MX Linux out of the box, they don't use systemd, but you can boot into it with grub. So you don't have So you do have a choice if you want to try Linux distro without systemd. Yeah, I mean, MX Linux is one example of a very recently very popular distribution that doesn't use systemd. I didn't know they give you the possibility to use it, and that's actually very interesting because, again, it's a point. It goes to confirm my point that Linux is modular and needs to be modular. And there are actually other distros that don't use systemd that are kind of tailored towards desktop. Okay, Dev1 is also just works on the desktop. And the other one that I'm thinking about right now is Void Linux, which is an interesting distribution, more aligned towards, okay, I'd say it's in the middle between Arch and Gentoo in terms of how much you actually how much manual intervention there is during the installation. Because Arch is, yeah, the installation is manual, but it's not that involved. And with Void Linux, it's a little bit more involved. And with Gentoo, you just need to know whatever you're doing. And then there's Linux from Scratch, which is just the book. And then you have to do everything yourself, which is pretty funny. Anyway, I think we can move on to the next topic, which is still about systemd, and it's about systemd homed in particular. Oh, sorry for that. Systemd homed. What is systemd homed? It's another place where another thing that systemd will take control over your home directory, and it's actually a very interesting project. It basically goes it's a the idea is to be able to separate the home directory from the rest of the system in a very modular way. The reasoning behind it is, well, mostly the advantages would be two. One, you could have a portable home folder. So let's say you have your, I don't know, you have 3 4 computers here, I don't know, one at work, one, you have one laptop and one at home, something like that, and you just want to use one home folder and you want to have it in a portable hard drive of some sorts. Maybe you have a, I don't know, a USB type C hard drive that's like super fast, using M.2 NVMe. That's a possibility. That's one use case, and you want to have this portable home directory always with you. And the systemd homd would allow you to do that, because it would decouple the actual operating system and the user ID from the operating system. It would use systemd and JSON-based user records to actually connect home directories on the fly. That's actually a very interesting idea, and one other thing that it would also allow is giving the option to have properly encrypted home directories, properly encrypted LUKS home directories, with like using loopback files. So just mounting a disk image practically. And why would you want to do that? Well, imagine, so encryption is weird with computers right now, because as of today, computers are a very personal device. So I have my laptop, I don't share with anyone. I have my phone, or like I have my toothbrush. I don't want to share these things with anyone. But that's not always the case, and there are possibly some scenarios, like for a desktop computer or for another kind of device, like for instance a powerful shared workstation that's like shared between many users. If you want to encrypt that, you need to encrypt the whole disk with the same password. So let's just say I use password 123 to encrypt the whole system. I am the administrator of the system, and I have to tell every user the encryption password, because they need to be able to boot that system up and start working on it. And the other thing is that the encryption password cannot be the same as the user password, because if the system is shared, everyone knows it. But at the same time, if I have access to your system, okay, so if I have access to a system that both you and me are sharing, and I know of some vulnerability, even if I don't have any administrator access, the system is decrypted. So it means that I can start working with various vulnerabilities, and maybe escalate to root and be able to access your home directory without any issue, and without the protection that encryption gives you. And with systemd homd, what would happen is, having every home folder decoupled from the system, you would be able to encrypt your own home directory using your own user password, so that even in a situation like this, your data will still be fine, and you wouldn't have any actual risk of your data being compromised. So let's see what the chat's saying. What I like about MX Link, okay, so sorry, I was reading the older message. Dilemma Linux says, if you go to advanced boot, I think in Grub, there's an option to say boot MX Linux with systemd. Okay, so it's again about the previous topic about systemd. And well, I think that's a nice option, particularly for compatibility. If you need to run something that absolutely requires systemd, well, you have your option there. So we're talking about systemd homd, and the only things that I really am skeptical about are how will it be implemented? Because first thing, having a loopback device as the actual path of your home directory, I don't know the repercussions of that choice, because loopback devices can be kind of slower compared to raw devices. And in a way, what could happen is that read and write operations could be noticeably slower. Well, it really depends on what kind of workload you have, but could be slower compared to normal operations. So that's one thing I don't really fully understand yet, that I'm pretty skeptical about. And the other thing is, um, how will distributions adopt it, and what distributions will adopt it? Because adoption for these kind of things is very important, because let's make an example with GNOME and Unity. When GNOME 3 started and Canonical decided that no, they didn't want to use GNOME 3, they started their own Unity desktop. What happened was that GNOME started growing and started maturing, but of course, since GNOME didn't have the huge user base that Ubuntu has, um, we always had some kind of issues, like performance issues and missing features and stuff like that. Since when Canonical started using GNOME again for their Ubuntu desktop, we've been seeing a lot of development in GNOME, and lots of long-standing issues got fixed, and now GNOME is a whole new thing. Thanks, I think we have to say thank you to Canonical mostly for how GNOME has gotten. And I think the same thing would happen here for something like Systemd Homemd. It's a very interesting technology, but it's also pretty radical. You would need to change the whole structure of your distribution to support something like that. And if major distributions don't adopt it, I don't see a bright future for it. But anyway, the news really was that Systemd Homemd will probably ship to will probably soon ship in Systemd 2.4.5, which is, well, it's great news. I mean, the sooner we can start playing with it, the better. And I think I will try playing around with it in virtual machines, of course, and using Arch, and that will be interesting. Maybe I will reach a point where I can use really the same home partition for both my desktop and my laptop. That would be fun. That would be fun, really fun. And this live was super fast, actually. We're just 38 minutes in, and I already completed all the topics that I really wanted to talk about. So anyone in the chat wants to say anything? Oh, right. I guess we can talk about some of my projects. That was one of the things I wanted to do with this live show. Sorry if if everything is still a little bit confused around here. This is like the whole show idea is still kind of a work in progress, so bear with me for a second. Anyway, I wanted to talk about one project that I've been working on since, well, quite some time now. It's called Feeds. Sorry, it's called Feeds. It's it's an RSS reader. Let me show you. There we go. So Feeds is a news reader for GNOME. It's written using GTK and libhandy, the GTK library that Purism developed for GTK to use on their phones. And, well, let me tell you two things about the project. Why did I start it in the first place? Oh, sorry. Why did I start it in the first place? Because I couldn't find any RSS reader or news reader that I liked. And so at some point, after countless hours of search and always one disappointment after another, I just decided to create my own because I can. And anyway, it's really a very simple app, and it's simple by design, really. It allows you to add new feeds using RSS URLs, and it allows you to search for stuff using a very fast search bar. You can save articles just like this, just by right clicking or long pressing on an entry. And you have some very simple filtration options to actually filter by feed, by whatever feed you want. So I can just look at the Planet Gnome news. Here they are. And it also offers some pretty nice features like a reader mode, which is actually based on Epiphany's reader mode, and an RSS content mode, which just pulls the actual content of the article from the RSS feed itself. A share function that copies the URL, and well, an option to open in the link in the browser, which is pretty obvious and self-explanatory. It's also pretty customizable, and it offers some options for KDE users or people that don't like CSD or client-side decorations. You can just go ahead and disable that if you want to. So I just wanted to show you that. Maybe it's something that you needed. Maybe you want to check it out and see how it works for you. And of course, feel free to open issues about it. You can find it on, I think you can just go to gfeeds.gabmus.org. So let me just write that in chat. And of course, it didn't count as a link. Let me see if the link works. I'm not sure at this point. Yep, it works. Okay, you can just go there and try it out for yourself. See if that works for you. So let's look at the chat right now. 0x4c47 says, great project. I just wanted to say that me and many other people probably consume RSS stuff on their phones, but then you mentioned the libhandy thing. Nice. Right, yeah, right. Libhandy is actually one of the reasons that I like so much Purism, because I see so many people hating on Purism, but to be honest, they've been doing some great things upstream for the community, including libhandy, which is one of the greatest additions to GTK since, well, GTK actually. It brings actual responsive UI and responsive widgets to GTK, and it does it in a very well, GTK way. I don't know any better way to say that. It's if you know GTK, if you know GTK development, libhandy actually works in, well, it looks like it's being developed by GNOME, and it looks like it's a part of GTK itself. It's that good. And well, we've been seeing lots of apps actually using that recently, and including actually GNOME apps, like the GNOME system settings that are now responsive. They're using a libhandy component called Handy Leaflet, and some other apps are using different components, like one of the greatest components, even if you don't care about responsiveness, is the settings menu. So the actual settings menu of, let me just show you my screen again. The actual settings menu of gfeeds, or just feeds, is from libhandy, and of course it's responsive, which is nice, but that's not the best thing about it. First off, it's tabbed, so you can easily organize different sections without having to over engineer a simple settings panel. And you also have a search function, which is very useful. There you go. It's actually one of the greatest additions to GTK, and this is really a very simple thing, but I think that this stuff is what makes a toolkit actually very nice to use. Because if you start having some pre-built components like this, and if you start like, I don't want to say forcing, but in a way you are kind of forcing a kind of design language, and I think that's actually a pretty good thing to achieve better platform consistency across the board. So one of the biggest issues with most platforms, including the Windows desktop, the Mac desktop, the Android, Android UI, and even most of the Linux desktop, is that UI is not really consistent across different apps or different distributions, and that's always been a problem because it makes the experience too inconsistent to actually call Linux a platform. And having some widgets that are ready made, that you can just go ahead and use, makes you actually think with the mindset of putting like components together and creating something that's well, it's of course modular, and you're creating something that's really new, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. But you're doing it using a fixed design language, and being consistent with the whole platform. Because if you look at feeds, and if you look at any other GNOME app like Nautilus, for example, or Tilix, let me just show you the screen again. You see that there's UI consistency here, and I'm far from being a designer. I don't know much about design myself, but it doesn't take much to create such a consistent UI when you have a toolkit like GTK with tools like libhandy. You can really create an experience. You can really start creating a platform just with something as simple as a toolkit. Anyway, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about for this episode. And it's been a short one this time, so sorry for that. Maybe next time I'll try to find some more topics to talk about, and maybe bring in some more interesting points of conversation. Thank you very much for being here, guys. It's been awesome to have you interact in the live chat. And so that's gonna be pretty much it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and if you like this video, please make sure to press the thumbs up button down there. And if you want to see more from me, you can just subscribe to the channel, and also you can join the TechPills community at techpills.technology/community. We have a Telegram group, we have a Telegram channel, and we have a Discord server. You can just go to techpills.technology/community and join them, or you can just go to one of these links you see overlaying here, and or use the QR code to join one of the two communities. Again, guys, thanks for watching. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye, guys.